Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 15th webinar here for job seekers. We are Employflex, EmployMum. We are primarily a recruitment service and we specialize in flexible work, but we also do workshops and we run these webinars every Thursday at the new time of 11 o'clock. So we also offer some training as well to get your employees and managers remote ready and remote happy. So we're rolling out that this quarter as well. Just to let you know that we have a management accountant role that's hot on our desk at the moment, and we're looking to fill that. So that role is in Tipperary. So if you're anywhere in the Midlands and you're a management accountant or know of any management accountants, please do send them our way. So today we are very excited. We have Dave A. Barry from Connexion.ie. He's coming all the way from Spain, the lucky sod. I'm sure the weather is a lot nicer than it is here in Clonakilty, West Cork, where it is lashing rain here this morning. So we're all very jealous, Dave, with your tan.
I won't talk too much about it, I promise.
And listen, a big thank you to you for giving up your time today. Dave has over 20 years experience as a HR professional, and he'll take us through his own personal story now. So we are very, very lucky to have him here today. So Dave is going to run through his presentation, and at the end of the presentation, he will answer your specific questions and at the end. So if you hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll see the question and answer feature. So while he's going through his presentation, if any questions pop up, just pop them in there and he will kindly answer them at the end of his presentation. So over to you, Dave, and we'll talk to you after your presentation.
Perfect. So I think I'm just going to share. You just need to enable me there to share my
oh yes, sorry.
Slides.
Oops.
Let's try it here.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll do that now. There you go. You should be able to share away there now.
Perfect. Let me just put this up here. So thank you, Karen, and the Employflex and EmployMum team for the opportunity to chat with people today around what I refer to as career connection for new opportunities. So what I'm going to do is it's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour, over my own background and my own learnings, and really what I'd like to do today, which is maybe quite different to a lot of the previous webinars, is because I've been in HR for over 20 years, is really to present the view from the other side, and without getting into any kind of breaches of confidentiality, linked to some of the companies I've worked with along the way, to kind of talk more generically about process on the other side, which I think as a candidate, would lead to more targeted and more informed applications, etc. So I'm going to start away here. For anyone who's on social media and tweeting, my handle is @DaveABarry and Connexion is @Connexion.ie, and we tend to use the hashtag connection. So who is Dave A. Barry? And first of all, to say the A is for Anthony. So it's a typical Cork name, Dave Barry, and there's quite a few of us around. So actually, when I was at Lily, which I'm going to talk about now, there was 3 of us on site. So I was Dave A, and there was a Dave J and a Dave M from memory. So it's kind of stuck since back then. So that's where that particularly originated from. So just to talk a little bit, I suppose, about my own career journey. Before I joined Lily, which was back in February 1999, I had a mix at that point of customer service, retail management, finance. But I was at a point at that stage really where I was looking to get into probably a bigger company. I knew from back in secondary school, throughout college, that there was some version of teaching or people related was going to feature for me. So I remember applying for Lily way back then, and even at the very first interview, although my initial role with them was a finance role, I was already talking about the interest that I had in HR, and they were really open to that concept of sending me back to study and eventually kind of move into that. And that's how over the course of my 13 years with Lilly, that's exactly what panned out. I started in February 1989, as I said, and by October, like I was back at UCC studying HR by night. And then when opportunities came up at the Kinsale site, because I was originally in the South Mall, I got to move down there and went onwards to, setting up the new biotech expansion, did Lean Six Sigma as a black belt for a while. And in my last year there, I helped set up what is now known as the Global Business Solutions at Little Island, and also got involved in the global voluntary exit program, at the end of which I left myself. So like it was quite cathartic, over the 13 years, the amount of things I got involved with. And what was kind of fantastic throughout that, I guess, as I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of today, was there was just really good career conversations going on, which I think for me is critical. So between Lilly and Trend, actually Micro, which is there in the middle, and Connexion, which I'm going to talk about on the next slide, I did kind of spend shorter stints of time, at other companies. And for me, this is why I'm particularly passionate about the whole concept of connection, that when we are in, a company where we genuinely feel that connection and that understanding to, what the company is and where it's heading and, what it's like to work there. And in my case, the fact that I stayed 13 years at Lilly, particularly felt it there, and 4 years of Trend, less times at companies elsewhere. And that wasn't, any type of reflection that they were bad companies or bad people. It was the connection for me, of my, let's call it, fit to those organizations, particularly Lilly, was more than the others. So it came to, after Trend and having gotten involved kind of with HR responsibility for Southern Europe for a chunk of time as well. I'd always had this vision, and it really fits, I think, with Employflex's and Employmum's, passion, around remote working and working from anywhere. So I was quite young actually when my dad died. I was 21 when he passed away, and I've always had this, experience that life can be cruelly short. So for me, there was always a longer term plan, primarily driven by the need to be somewhere sunny, as Karen pointed out earlier. But also, to get involved with work, that could move, and was more, mobile, I guess, than some of the previous roles that I'd been in. So I established Connexion, which is Spanish for connection, in October 2018. So we are two later on this month. And how I describe it as an organizational HR consultancy. I'm just going to quickly go through this slide and the next and move onwards to the nuts and bolts again of career connection. But the vision that we have as an organizational HR consultancy is really a world of people feeling connected and well at work. And our mission and purpose is that we connect culture, strategy, and people for happier, high performance. And again, I particularly felt that, during my 13 years at Lilly, and, likewise elsewhere for shorter periods of time. So really what I'm looking to drive, with Connexion is that same sense of connection, which for me equates to being both happy and high performing at work. So that's where that mission and purpose has come from, and the values, which for me are paramount. So integrity, I always quote the C.S. Lewis definition of doing the right thing when no one is watching. I am passionate about people and work. We spend a lot of time in work, and I think, feeling that connection and feeling happy and high performing for me is critical. And it's more of a big picture connection value, I would say, in that, the value that Connexion can really bring is more joining the dots, I would say, than, getting involved, for instance, in kind of more documentation or more operational type HR, although we do that too. So that just gives you a sense. And the reason I particularly gone into a little bit of detail on the values there is that they're actually my own values, which I've assigned to Connexion. And I just maybe at this point want you to start thinking about, if you had to pick 3 words that particularly describe, your value system and what works for you, what doesn't work for you. We're going to get into a little bit of that as we go through there. So I just wanted to give you a bit of context on Connexion's, which are ultimately mine. And, going forward, if I were to hire people, even the associates that I work with, even doing this webinar with Employflex today, for me, I see similar values, in Employflex as I do in Connexion, and that's why we're doing this webinar today. I won't do webinars with just anybody, because I think the fit, again, of what they're about and with what I/Connexion is about for me is critical. I'm not going to delay on the slide because there's a lot in there. I just wanted to quickly mention that I've been working kind of with the business mentor myself actually over the course of the summer. And the business is really evolving into more of an end-to-end, talent management and organizational HR consultancy under those three umbrellas of solutions: discover, connect, engage. So all I really wanted to say here was right down on the bottom right is that Career Connection one-to-one for new opportunities is a solution which I've been doing a little bit under the radar with people right from the very beginning of setting this up. So I'm at a point, I guess, where more people were asking for it. So I just felt it was time to kind of bring it onto the slide, as they say. So that's what's in there. So there's a lot more information on all of that on our website. So to move along, conscious of time, to get into the nuts and bolts of what we are talking about today. So the reason I call it joining the dots of your career is what I found in 20 years, let's call it, of either me having career conversations, with other people, or them having the conversations with me. And that sometimes the dots, they're not joining, where someone, will kind of look at their CV or look at their experience, and, and this happens when I do the Career Connection one-to-one, Zoom session with people, is as they're talking through kind of their CV and their experience and their motivators for, joining somewhere, leaving somewhere, enjoying work somewhere, not enjoying work somewhere else. Sometimes all of that conversation leads up to, like, for me, a disconnect in where they're at, what they're looking for next. Like it just doesn't add up. And I don't mean that, disingenuously, that again, that the dots aren't quite joining. So what I thought would be useful with all of you today is just to give a little bit of a taster. I mean, that session is a 2-hour Zoom, so I'm kind of doing something on speed here just to give you a taster. But I was really looking for you to think about these 3 questions. So the first one is, as you look back, on your own experience and your career CV, which has been your most enjoyable work and why? And I'm going to answer these questions from my own perspective, actually, just to kind of give you some context as well. So for me, the most enjoyable work, that I've ever done was really during Lily, I would say, and Trend in particular, where they were chunks of work, that were particularly around either, creating a new organization or somewhere that was expanding, where we really needed to are transforming, and so we really needed to go back to what was the culture, what was the strategy, what did that mean for people. So they, for me, were definitely my most enjoyable pieces of work that I've done along the way, because I think we get very caught up in the company that we worked with, the role that we were in, the nice people, that we miss sometimes when we move on. But I think for me, to really join the dots of our career, we have to think about the actual work. So to answer the question 2 there, and Karen, it's coincidentally, you were talking about management accountancy at the very beginning of the webinar there, no disrespect to finance. I have massive respect for people in finance. I think the wheels of business and industry cannot turn, without amazing finance people, which, has become much more of a forward-looking function as well, which is fantastic. It wasn't the right work for me. I had originally studied French and economics, actually, with a view to teaching, and ended up in finance, probably because I'm a guy who, dots the I's, crosses the T's. But I'm sorry, finance people, for saying this, I used to try and go on holidays at month end, because I really didn't find, the work, was the right work for me, that was motivating and stuff. And actually, within Lily, we were working with coaches and stuff, and, even through personality profiling, I think it was MBTI from memory, it likewise indicated that type of work, because it was too detailed or too, maybe operational for me. And so, when I moved to Lily, you know, I was clear about that. So although my initial role was in finance, you know, I was very quickly talking about moving to HR and more, you know, as soon as I could. So the third question, back to you then, is what are your current thoughts, you know, read the next opportunity? Because for instance, like if you had a story like mine, whereby your most enjoyable work, you know, was organizational HR, your least enjoyable work, you know, was finance. And then the next role that you were thinking you might be interested in or, you know, applying for was head of finance or something, you know, like that is not connecting. And I know that sounds quite obvious, but sometimes, you know, we get caught up in where the opportunities might lie, and that there's lots of roles, you know, in X. But for me, it's critical, you know, from an enjoyment perspective, from a passion perspective, you know, we have to look back to look forward. So if we haven't enjoyed that work before, we're likely not going to enjoy it again. So hopefully that's rung some bells for people, maybe some eureka moments. I think eureka moments for me are always a good thing, even if it puts you on a completely different path going forward. Because I think for me, we spent a lot of time in work and now we're working from home. It's all, you know, kind of blurring, unfortunately, during COVID. So I think that for me is critical that, you know, that this is all connecting. So we can chat more about that anyway if you've got any questions on that. So I thought the next thing that would be quite interesting to do is to get a very HR here actually with describing from the other side, let's call it, you know, what HR as a function are as people, nice people, you know, are looking for with the talent acquisition or recruitment process is really that a candidate has both what I'm going to describe as job match and also organization match. And a lot of the time, candidates, and we've all been guilty of it along the way, you know, we probably spend too much time and thought prepping, you know, around the job spec, you know, so if it's asking for, you know, experience in this, skill in that, you know, we're kind of, you know, we're ticking all those boxes. But from a process perspective, again, the process is really looking at both your match to the job, but also to the organization. And we need to research both and prep both. Because again, the whether it's psychometric testing or whether it's face-to-face interviews or both, or via Zoom in the current era or similar, the process is still going to be looking at both of these things. So let me explain what each of them are now. So job match is really the fit between your skill set and what the job is requiring. I'm going to get into more detail in a couple of slides here as to, you know, how you can particularly prep for that side of the selection process, as it's called. And the organization match is, and this again is why I talked earlier about Lily and trend and values. The organization match is the fit between your values and those of the employer. And usually those will be included in, you know, a section maybe called About Us, or, you know, what it's like to work here, or culture. You know, it tends to have that type of terminology on the relevant section on the website. So just at this point, again, for the job match, it's the job spec, you know, our job description, you know, will have lots and lots of detail in there for you, again, to really look at and, you know, with, again, integrity, you know, do you have, you know, you don't have to have 100% of what they're looking for. And there is some differences between male and females, actually, that when we look at job specs, no disrespect to my fellow males, but we'll tend to believe that we have a higher match, you know, our fit, and for female candidates, sometimes we'll go the opposite, actually, where you know, they might estimate their percentage match as less, you know, than that is actually the case. So that's something individually that we all need to think about and work on. But with the organization match, and that's why I showed you the Connexion values, which are mine, of integrity, people, passion, and big picture connection. Lily's values actually were integrity, respect for people, and excellence. You know, so it's no coincidence, again, the fact that I stayed there 13 years, that Connexion's values, resemble Lily's values, because for me, it was my professional kind of growing up, I don't regret moving on because I've gone on to do amazing things, and, I'm doing now exactly what I was planning to do. But again, the fit between their values, my values, and now what Connexion is doing means that the happy high performance, as I call it, that I would have experienced at Lily, is still happening now. So we're going to get into a little bit more detail on both of these, but hopefully that makes the differentiation between job match and organization match clear, because again, the process is going to be looking for both, as you move through it. So wanted to give you a couple of tips, and I'm conscious of kind of trying to have the content on here by around 12:30 to make sure that we've got some good times for questions. But some tips are, the CV, LinkedIn and applications that I thought would be good to share with you. So one of the most critical things for me, and this is one of the outputs that comes from the work that I do with people, is what I call an impactful candidate brand statement. That it's both on of your CV, but also on LinkedIn. And an example of one that I've just late last week. So like in that particular candidate's case, they would, use words to describe themselves like, ambitious and creative and a problem solver. And they have an experience mix of customer service, hospitality, and real estate. And what they're actively looking for now, they're based over here actually in Alicante, is a related customer or languages role. So for me, and I know, for instance, Louise Bunyan with Smart Fox Digital, who we're hoping to kind of do some work together at some point. For instance, Louise even provides like a free short course, I think, on this type of thing as well. I just said I'd give her a quick shout out there because it came into my head as I was talking about it. But for me, what is critical here, I guess, is that there's 3 words really which are talking about somebody's skills, and there's 3 words which are referring to the experience mix that they have. And most importantly, there's 3 words, in this case, related customer and languages, which are making clear what they're looking for. So a lot of the time we're very good at making kind of our skills and our experience clear, but we're not really being, that clear or targeted with what we're looking for next, which, to be found on LinkedIn, and again, Louise and others are much more subject matter experts in this than me, but LinkedIn, will look at, do you have a profile photo, and the descriptor of your current role, and then also words like these that we're seeing on the screen here at the top of your profile, for instance, to be found faster, with those 3, if you don't have any of those 3 or all of those 3, the likelihood of being found, let's call it, is less via LinkedIn. So that piece for me is critical because I think it really makes you clear as a candidate, again, the skills that you have, the experience that you have, and what you're looking for next or going forward. And as much as is possible, LinkedIn should mirror, your CV. And I know if you're in a current role, that may be challenging, but so the full detail, for instance, of each of your roles, I tended to put back into LinkedIn, when I moved on from somewhere, versus while I was there. But it's whatever is appropriate for you. But as much as possible, from a flow perspective, if there's potentially roles on your CV that aren't on LinkedIn or vice versa, for again, a talent acquisition person or a HR person, it'll be one of the questions that they'll immediately kind of jump to. I spotted on your CV this, but you don't have it on LinkedIn or vice versa. So as much as possible, they should mirror, not to the nth degree of detail, but certainly from a flow, that all of your kind of relevant experience and skills and stuff are reflected on both. And the old wordy cover letters, which back in the day, people nearly should have won kind of literate prizes for, they were so well worded and went on for 2 pages. I mean, for me, they've probably always been a bit of a no, and that, you know, particularly if you are dealing with massively high volumes of applicants, like you're on from a, again, talent acquisition HR perspective, like you're really zoning in on, you know, the requirements. You know, for instance, is there a certain qualification? Is there a certain number of years experience? You know, so you're really zoning in on that, versus, you know, how complimentary maybe the cover letter is being, you know, of your organization. But what really resonates with me always and still now is that even with a very short, you know, a couple of lines, you know, in an email, you know, or in the back in the day on a letter, that someone's actually really thought about the job, you know what I mean, and really thought about the organization. And instead of it being, you know, kind of a full page of a wordy letter, that again, you know, that the sense that they have really thought about their match to the job and really thought about their match to the organization, and that comes through and resonates, for me, is way more powerful than a very wordy cover letter. And correct spelling is a must-have. I think we're all on the spectrum of our capability in spelling, but with kind of spell check and stuff today, it's kind of, it just resonates really badly, you know what I mean, for there to be a typo. So and it's always a good thing, I think, to get somebody else to throw an eye over it as well, you know, because sometimes it's about the nuances of language and not just the actual spelling of them. So to move it on then, and I'm just carrying on keeping an eye on time, preparing for interviews, and again, just wanted to give kind of 3 core tips on here. So the first one, again, I'm going to go back to is job match, which, as we talked about earlier, is that fit between your skill set and what the job is actually requiring. And I mean, job specs are providing a lot of detail. You know, they're talking about potentially the qualifications that might be required. They're talking about the experience that might be required. They're talking about the types of skills and attributes and knowledge, you know, that they need the candidate to have. So from a job match perspective, you know, your prep in both applying actually and you know, in preparing for the interviews, you know, is very much focused again on the job, and you being able to, you know, validate that you have, you know, either the experience or the required level of skill, you know, to do the job at the level that the organization hiring needs the job to be at. On the organization match, then, you know, that one is a little bit more complex, but hopefully I'm removing some of the mystery of that today. So again, the organization match is more about the fit between your values and those of the employer. And as I said earlier, it's usually included in you know, the About Us section, or what it's like to work here, or the culture sections of websites. So for instance, you know, if you were applying for a job to Connexion, you know, and I'm saying the values of this, you know, organizational HR consultancy are integrity, people passion, you know, big picture connection, that, you know, if you were applying, say, to me, you know, that in interview, you know, if I were to ask you the question, you know, what does integrity mean for you? You know, what does big picture connection kind of mean to you? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of STARS, which stands for situation, task, action, result. It's been around a million years as a concept, probably more kind of behind the scenes in HR and in interviews. But a lot of interview processes, you know, in particular, once you kind of move beyond kind of psychometric testing and stuff, are particularly looking for like scenarios, you know, where there was some kind of a task, you know, that you took some kind of an action, and what was the result. And often people want to hear when things went wrong. I mean, I always ask the question, tell me a time, you know, where that went wrong. Because we all make mistakes. And I think, you know, what, again, for instance, to go back to integrity, doing the right thing when no one is watching, you know, I would want to get a sense of, you know, somebody making a mistake and actually being okay, you know what I mean, with raising the hand as to that mistake was made, but more importantly, you know, what came out of that. And, you know, so I think whichever kind of, you know, company, and I mean, to be fair, you know, some companies and organizations, they don't have their values defined. And a lot of the organizational work, you know, that I do and associates for clients actually is defining, you know, their culture, their vision, their mission and purpose, their values. Because for me, every company, honestly, particularly even more so now, I would say, kind of in COVID and going forward when everyone's working remotely, you know, to have, if we don't have these things defined, you know, first of all for everybody internally, but then also for everybody external, you know, who might be interested in applying to us, how can the, you know, talent acquisition process really be scientific and targeted? When we can't get granular, you know, more so from an organization match perspective as to the type of person, you know, that we're looking for. So hopefully that's resonating with you and demystifying a little bit. But the key point to take away there is that, you know, when you're picking up somewhere that you're applying to where they're saying people here demonstrate blah, 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 you know, our values here are 1, 2, 3, you know, that you're taking what they're actually providing you. And really thinking about what does that mean for you or to you, and thinking about examples, you know, over your experience where you know, you've particularly gotten it right, but don't be afraid or shy about thinking of times, you know, where you didn't get it right, but how you dealt with that and how, you know, you developed going forward out of it. And one of my last points, Karen, is around informed end questions. So often at the end of an interview, obviously, you know, the interviewer will ask, you know, do you have any questions? And to be fair, sometimes we do have a few of them in our back pocket and they've been covered, you know, during the interview, and we don't have, you know, necessarily a question. But as much as possible, I mean, you know, what I'm calling an informed end question is really, really impactful, you know, to an interviewer. So for instance, I mean, Workvivo, for instance, announced, you know, kind of an expansion of hiring another 100 people in Cork during the week. So like if I or you or whoever, you know, was interviewing with Workvivo, you know, like this would be an amazing end question, you know, to the interview that really would demonstrate that you know, we're kind of keeping an eye on the sector and we genuinely have an interest, you know, in that company, for instance, because we spotted the announcement and now we're asking an informed end question in the interview. Another one in the current climate, you know, could be, I don't want to send the interviewer into despondency or anything, but it might be around COVID, you know what I mean? So like what type of impact, you know, has COVID and lockdown kind of had on the company that you are applying to. So, you know, it's very individual to the company that you're applying to. But again, if there is anything around expansion, you know, if there's any bit of news kind of, you know, in the media or anything recently, you know, that it would really make an informed end question. You know, you would really leave that interviewer with probably, as I would describe it, like a big picture connection impression, you know, in finishing up the interview, which I think would end it on a real you know, impressive note that you are someone who, you know, has got that bigger kind of view and bigger perspective on the company that you're applying to. So they are the main points that I was going to go through. So I can come back out of the slides here, Karen, and we can get into some questions.
Great, Dave. Thanks a million. That was very, very interesting, and lots of very valuable takeaways there. I personally liked the, you know, ask yourself the questions, ask yourself the hard questions, I suppose, to see exactly where you are when you are looking for work or when you're given a role or change. You know, and a coach can be really helpful there as well, you know.
Definitely. Actually, I should have said earlier, Karen, thank you for reminding me that like with the career connection one-to-one stuff that I do, I mean, it is, you know, it's higher level, like it's really, you know, almost talking to somebody through their CV, their experiences, their motivators, why they moved, why they enjoyed that, why they didn't enjoy that. But if I feel, that someone is requiring deeper coaching, which is not something that I am, absolutely, I refer people on to, obviously with Connexion, there's a couple of associates that I've worked with kind of in other companies that I tend to refer people to because I know them and I've worked with them, and I really trust them. But I know within Employflex, I think you guys have got Helen, and there's lots of other coaches that you've had on webinars and stuff. So I think it's a very individual thing for people, to kind of click with the coach that they're working with. But absolutely, if I feel like that this all needs to go deeper and there's a lot more direction to be kind of discovered, I would absolutely refer somebody onwards, and I have massive respect for the work that coaches do.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. Yeah. And I just think it's a great investment for somebody who's at that crossroads perhaps, and, needs that little bit of help to find their way out or
Definitely.
Yeah. Look, from what you've said, really, I think as a HR professional, really, when you're looking at a candidate, it's nearly more the fit with the organization that's more important. I mean, obviously, if you're interested in somebody, their CV, they've ticked the boxes for the CV, and they, on paper, they can do what you want them to do. But for you, it seems to be the fit with the organization, and I presume this would be the same for a lot of HR professionals. Is learning more important?
No, absolutely. I mean, from kind of a talent acquisition and recruitment process, I mean, to get the organization match wrong, you know what I mean, to bring somebody into the company or whatever the setup is, like, that is not going to fit, with kind of the way things work. They're going to get either frustrated, with maybe the pace of things, or else they'll start kind of almost trying to change things too quickly because that's the value that they have, that they have developed, from working somewhere else. So, like, I think, when someone is lacking like a skill to do the job, training, obviously would be a quicker fix of kind of closing that gap. But for instance, I mean, if someone was to join Connexion and wasn't passionate about people, I mean, the fact that I hired them in the first bit, clearly I would have gotten the process very wrong myself. Yeah. But like, it would be a disaster. So I think, I mean, job match, and I think sometimes I always remember a trend actually at a particular point, and we really started talking about candidates being 80% ready, that they didn't need to have the 100% of what we were looking for. On more so, I would say, the job match. We didn't compromise on, the organization match because, again, that was a very different culture, a sales environment. So, I think it's just the risk of getting it wrong for me is more with organization match, because again, someone will come in and they won't fit in and it won't work, and the team will be impacted, the manager will be impacted, the person won't stay, will have to go out and fit it again. So some for me is about the more definitive we get with what our values and kind of our culture is, we have a higher chance of getting the organization match correct. Yeah.
So I suppose really for candidates, it's extremely important to do your homework. Mm-hmm. and to swat up on what the values and the culture of the organization is. That is so important, I suppose, not just the nuts and bolts of the particular job we're going for.
Definitely. And again, I mean, websites usually, again, it'll be under kind of about us, what it's like to work here. But I mean, if anyone is applying to somewhere that they know somebody working there, I mean, you're not being disingenuous by, contacting someone who works in a company that you're working in. To kind of have an informal, non kind of conflict of interest type conversation around, like, tell me what it's like to work there. I mean, do you like it? If so, why? And I mean, it would be interesting to hear the words that they're using, are they resonating with, how the company was kind of describing it on the website and stuff. So I think Cork and Ireland and Europe, I mean, like, we're so connected from a network perspective that everyone usually knows someone who knows someone, working where you're potentially going to apply to. So I think we need to use these, and it doesn't compromise anything. If you're having like an informal conversation that's data gathering almost, as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. Yeah. So a question that came in just yesterday by email. How do you get employers to see or hear you when you have the qualifications for the role and other attributes, but not the work experience that they're looking for? This person feels that they'd get up to speed very quickly. They just need the opportunity. And how do you get that across without sounding overly confident? So they have the qualifications, but they don't necessarily have the experience. How would they get that across?
Yeah, and actually HR as a function traditionally is probably the worst at doing this, and that it usually insists, that somebody has worked in HR, for a job in HR. And I often get people contacting me like, but that's just a vicious circle or cycle of, if everyone has that response, how do you break it? I mean, the first thing to say to defend us as a function, and it's actually usually not HR is finalizing the job spec, it's the area, or the hiring manager. So like if the job spec, for instance, is saying, I need someone to have this qualification, 5 years experience, 5 years relevant experience or something, like they're not saying that willy-nilly. What they're really doing is they're looking at like, the team usually, and kind of the level of capability, and making, I would say, an informed decision like as to the level of the candidate that they need to come in and to join the team and fill the seat, that's either new or someone has kind of moved on from. So I think that's the first thing to say, that we kind of almost need to respect the fact that it's on the spec. It's not there for no reason, like it's there for kind of sound business reason. But just to start with kind of introducing another couple of terms here, and a lot of this is HR speak, we should have our own glossary or something for people. So like a lot of the times we will use terms like, is a candidate ready, near ready or not ready? And they're terms that often get used more around succession planning internally. But to that question that's come in there, I think the person in question kind of needs to reflect like they've seen, that it's asking for 5 years, and that they're referring to the fact that it's asking for 5 years, but I've got 3. So, that I feel I'm near ready, and could close that gap quickly with development. So I certainly wouldn't read that as cocky, or kind of, overly confident, because for me, it's been a measured kind of response again, where they're noticing the requirement, they've reflected on that requirement, and they're really making a call, that they feel that they're almost near ready as opposed to not ready.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay, another question here. Thank you, Dave. Lots of thank yous coming through, actually. As you've had experience in larger organizations such as Lilly, can you share if they use ATS, application tracking software? I rarely have luck with larger firms, and I wonder if I'm not even making it past that initial screening.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the bigger organizations, they are using tracking system, within those systems, so some of them now, and particularly more so going forward, so sourcing, for instance, of candidates, is a role very, that could be fully roboticized. Because at the end of the day, if the job spec, look, I need the candidate to have 5 years experience, I need them to have that qualification, the screening could be done automatically. But for a lot of companies that I've worked in, and in recent times, worked with, like although it's an applicant tracking system, there's still someone physically screening the CVs, you know what I mean? So I think to that person's question, I don't necessarily think, that it's to do with the fact that it's an ATS. Hopefully maybe some of what I've been talking today has kind of resonated as to, like, are they applying for the right things? Are they applying in the right way? Because I would say, again, there's still people, talent acquisition recruiters, are screening the CVs at the front end. So there's something, again, not connecting, if they're finding that they're having not as much success as they would like.
Yeah, I suppose in that instance, when somebody is, never getting called for an interview, they may need to look at their CV
Yeah.
because really that is what's going to get them the interview, or and
And I think to go further back, like, are they applying for the right things? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
exactly,
The
yeah.
kind of the career connection that I talked about earlier. I mean, you know, so for instance, like if someone has completely different experience up until now, and all of a sudden they're applying for, you know, a completely different role, like have they given context, you know what I mean, as to why all of their experience, for instance, has been in retail, you know, and now they're applying to become like a bioprocess technician at Point Green or something, you know, which lots of people do actually,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's more like, have they explained why, you know what I mean, or what the interest is, you know what I mean? So I think sometimes it's when, again, on the reviewer's side, like the dots won't necessarily join of, you know, why someone has the interest in the role that they do.
Very good, yeah. Another question from an anonymous attendee. Any tips for the new normal of Zoom interviewing or phone interviewing? I have my first one soon, and while I have all the tech sorted and tested, I'm just wondering if you have any tips on how to nail it. And thanks for all your insights so far.
I mean, I think I had quite a lively conversation with somebody recently around this actually. So for me, I mean, I've been using Zoom, I think since like 2014 maybe. Trend actually was one of the first kind of companies to pilot it. So for me, I just, like, it's just a norm. Like I think for me, I feel I have, you know, certainly 99% same kind of conversations and quality of conversations, you know, via Zoom than I do face to face. So like for me, it's the same being face to face. So, you know, we should be doing the same prep around the job match, around the organization match. And the only difference is, you know, we're not sitting face to face.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, we actually do workshops for people going for online interviews. If you want to contact us, we can help you with that. But I suppose it's you know, being really 100% comfortable with the tech is so important as well. Like,
okay, absolutely.
You know.
The tech element, you know, having obviously kind of, you know, even good internet, and, you know, being comfortable and, you know, talking on camera and stuff, you know. So I definitely think there's a tech element, obviously, which is different, getting comfortable with that. But for me, the prep and the flow and stuff would be pretty much the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Another question from an anonymous attendee. So returning women or women who choose to stay at home, how to deal with the gap in time from being actually outside the workforce. How would you approach the gaps in the CV? So she has added volunteer work, parent-teacher groups, work with sports clubs, etc. How to get some, have you any advice on getting the CV noticed? Just any extra advice other than just sprinkle glitter on it?
Yeah.
Got a good sense of humor anyway.
Glitter is good too. I think like it's a really interesting question because I feel very fortunate that, you know, I've worked in you know, organizations, and I mean, I suppose HR likewise is tends to be a primarily female function, as in people in the roles and stuff, you know what I mean? So for me, I think Lily and Trend, you know, in particular, they just had such respect for maternity, you know what I mean? And, you know, maternity leave, that, you know, internally, you know, before people were kind of returning to work and stuff, you know what I mean? They were having great conversations about their next role, and, you know, that the time out, you know, was just something that was a norm, you know what I mean? And that it didn't have to slow down their career. Now, I accept that in other organizations and lots of other organizations, that's not the case. And we've got a whole gender pay gap and everything. Sometimes maternity leaves impact because someone misses out, you know what I mean, on pay increases and stuff, you know, why? Because they're actually out on leave. But to this lady's question in particular, I mean, I think, you know, as a candidate, one has to be unapologetic for having been, you know, on either, you know, maternity leave or take time out, you know what I mean, for family reasons, you know, to, you know, because it was the right thing to do, you know. So I think it kind of, for me, goes back to the integrity thing. And, you know, I think we have to talk about kind of, you know, like, let's call it these timeouts, honestly, because, you know, an organization whose values kind of align with that openness and honesty, would want someone to, to not try and I mean, sometimes it's the hesitance of people to put it down on paper. But like I was doing the career connection stuff with someone a while back, who'd relocated from India, and she obviously took the time, because her husband's role started straight away to, look after kind of settling the family here and, getting, all of the house and school and everything. And, was really kind of uncomfortable with almost, reflecting that on the CV. And I was like, why? Like that's what you've been doing. Now, in that particular person's case, they did also kind of study, a CIPD qualification actually, remotely and stuff as well. So they were able to put that in as well. So like, I think to cut to the chase, I think we have to reflect the time as it was, and not be, almost apologetic, but kind of proud that that was the right thing, for someone and their family to do at the time. And I think organizations would appreciate that honesty. Good organizations would appreciate that honesty.
Very good, yeah. I mean, I suppose what we would say, and we talk to a lot of candidates in this situation, own the gap, as you said, don't apologize for it. And, do put in all the stuff that you did during that time as well, because a lot of that can be very transferable skills, so.
Absolutely.
And very, skills, the soft skills are so important now, I think, as well, so it's important to highlight that as well as we live in the remote world that we're living in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So another question similar, how any tips on how you would help someone rebuild their confidence after a 5-year career break?
Yeah, so this is where I think coaching particularly come in, so again, the stuff that I do is kind of higher level, where the dots, as I call it, aren't quite joining. But for someone who feels, their confidence has been impacted and they've had a time out, let's call it. And sometimes in all of our careers, by the way, things happen where our confidence gets impacted. And so, we've all felt like this at some point. But this is where I think qualified coaches are, unbelievable at really kind of getting in under, what exactly has caused the confidence dip. But more importantly then, really working closely with someone and putting them on a plan to bring it back up and supporting a candidate, as they start reapplying and re-interviewing and stuff. And there's some amazing stories of, coaches will never reveal names clearly, but like they will talk generically, of examples where someone's confidence was in the toilet and now, they're operating at a global level, because they went on that journey with them. Yeah. So I think in that particular case, I definitely think a coach is required.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Yeah, I suppose we as a company as well, we do refer to coaches when we see there is a need there, and we have seen the transformational results that they can get. It's quite a phenomenal actually. I think like my mum is a life coach actually, but I kind of used to poo-poo the whole thing, but I actually have seen so many unbelievable results from people going to, people have just turned their lives completely around.
Coaches, likewise for coaches. I mean, there's probably a lot of people, have kind of pursued coaching in recent years. And I think it's no different to any other discipline, where there's, some people are fantastic, some people are okay, and some people are quite new to it. And so I would think really some of it is to do with, how we relate, So, to the coach, like, have they kind of worked in backgrounds that we've worked in where they'd really get, where we're coming from. And sometimes, the stage, not age, that we're at, that there's kind of similarities to, that this kind of really resonates. So, I'm not kind of, again, being disingenuous here, but what I would say to anyone who's thinking of, doing kind of deeper work than I do with a coach, that really talk to a few, to really get a sense of, your connection again with them and their capability as well. Actually.
Yeah, totally agree as well. Yeah. We have a panel of coaches now on our website. And what I normally say to candidates is go in and look at all of their profiles and see which one resonates with you, or, or ring a couple of them and have a chat with them and see which one you feel a connection with.
Exactly.
You know,
And just to say to all attendees, we didn't practice this part. It's we're naturally aligned, I think, on coaching without ever having had that conversation.
Yeah. No, this isn't this isn't staged.
Organic.
Time for one or two more questions. Is that okay with you, Dave?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so a question from another attendee. I interviewed for a multinational recently and was told that whilst I have a great CV, great relevant experience, and did a great interview, they were looking for somebody they could mold into the job. Are they getting at my age? I'm 53 years old. Thanks. This is something I've been told actually as well, going to interviews. Oh, we wouldn't be comfortable giving you direction. You know, something. You know, sometimes you come across very strong and confident.
Yeah, I
No.
think, I mean, I'm going to be honest here and say that there is ageism going on, you know what I mean? And, you know, pre-COVID, I would have actually had, and more in kind of sectoral settings and kind of informal settings, you know, people who recount feeling that there was ageism, you know what I mean, even in the tone of the interview actually, and kind of you know, the follow-up that they came out of it. But what I would go back to here, I suppose, again, is job match and organization match. So, like, it's not surprising, you know, I mean, I'm not that far off the age myself of, you know, we'll jump to, you know, probably that as a factor, you know, because it might appear the most obvious, you know, to us that it might have been something that impacted. But what would be interesting for that particular candidate is, you know, if they hadn't kind of done the organization match research and you know, like to do that now almost, you know what I mean, to almost, you know, get under the skin of, well, what type of person were they looking for, and you know, to the molding comment, you know, maybe you know, their values. And this isn't about positive values, negative values. We all have different values. But the whole point is about finding the match to the one that most matches ours. So I would think just as kind of a positive kind of follow-up for that candidate themselves, you know, is to just maybe kind of research the organization match thing now. You know, and there would be nothing wrong. You know, I would regularly have had unsuccessful candidates, you know, kind of come back to me, and I'm not going to get into kind of dodgy territory here, but I mean, organizations kind of have to be careful, you know, with how they, you know, provide kind of feedback, you know, to unsuccessful candidates. But like, I'm a bit different to a lot of HR people. I'm just going to kind of put that out there. Like, I've had very kind of open and honest conversations with candidates. Look, when you had this response, you know, to that question, you know, it just, you know, for instance, with people passion, you know, if I take that as an example, like, it just didn't quite resonate. And like, one of the interviewers just kind of couldn't move beyond that. Like, and I think that's not, you know, I think that conversation is hugely helpful to someone, you know, to think about for the next time. And so if this particular candidate didn't get, you know, the specifics, you know, that would be another option to actually, you know, like, if they felt they could ask the question, but some people won't, because they'll kind of fear and maybe almost retribution for being that open and honest.
Okay, good. Very honest answer. Thanks very much. Okay, I think we're running out of time now. So just Julianne is asking, again, thanks for flying in here. She's thanking you for this, and can we forward the slides to us afterwards? But we will be actually putting this up on YouTube. So anybody, and we'll be sending you the link as well. So anybody who wants to see this again, they can hop on YouTube, or if you want to tell people about it, they can see it on YouTube.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect, absolutely. And the other thing I was just going to do there before finishing up is just like, if anybody for whatever reason wants to contact me, that these are my details, basically.
Super. That's great. And obviously they can't meet you at the moment, Dave, because you're in sunny Spain.
Yeah, now my plan, I think I shared with you. So I've kind of been back and forth really between Cork and here for the last 3.5 years. You know, so once kind of COVID and quarantine kind of relaxes a little bit, hopefully in time, you know, like, I will have a monthly presence back in Cork as well. So for the moment, I'm living in a Zoom world. Absolutely, yeah.
Zoom chats. Listen, a huge thank you to Dave for your time here today and for your insight as a HR professional. It was very, very valuable. And I myself actually was learned a lot as well. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
To let everybody know that next week we have Senator Emer Curry on with us. Emer has been an advocate for flexible work for a long, long time. And that is one of her main agendas, I suppose, as senator. So she'll be on and she'll be open to hearing your questions. So if you want to get involved in the flexible work conversation and you want to let her know your needs and wants as a employee or as somebody who's looking for work or as a female in the workforce, she would really, really love to hear your opinions. So that will be same time, same place, next week with Senator Emer Curry. So that will be very interesting. So without further ado, we'll say adios. Is it what you say in Spain?
Adios.
Adios. And we'll see you next week. And again, a huge thank you to Dave for today.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Adios.
you. Ciao.